add Regina
Green
in.
room. Wonderful.
Hey.
Yes, so speaking of open source, we are super excited to feature open source projects, and we always love it when we get a maintainer to come and talk about the project. Yes, and I would say I always just love to get my, claws into whatever the new thing is that makes me super happy. And at this moment, and if you are looking for your open source side hustle, I highly recommend Project Argo. The Argo project is a really fun community. It's a really fun project. I have a lot of very good friends involved in it, and it's very cross-cultural, cross-company. Regina's joining us today from Red Hat, but there's great folks from CodeFresh and from Intuit and from Adobe and from so many great companies that contribute. So I just picked my favorite maintainer for the day, but and yes, I say that to all my favorite maintainers. But I will say, Regina, please take it away. Introduce yourself, and we'll be here to monitor the chat for questions. You can also, if you see questions come in, but we'll pop back in if you need us.
Awesome, thank you. You can hear me okay? Everything sounds good, right?
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay. Awesome. So let me just present my screen. Okay. So slides are showing. Okay, I can see it. Awesome. So hello, welcome to an introduction to Argo. This presentation is going to cover an overview of what Argo is, what the different projects are, and why you should get involved. My name is Regina Scott. I've been a software engineer at Red Hat for a little over 2 years on the OpenShift GitOps team. And way back in September 2021, I became a maintainer for one of the main Argo projects called Argo CD. And I'll go over a little more in detail later what that is. So our agenda for today, as I said before, I'm going to be telling you all about Argo projects, starting with the history of Argo and how it grew into what it is today, as well as where it needs to go still. And I'm going to go over the 4 main projects under the Argo umbrella, as well as a few of its numerous other smaller projects. And then I'm going to give some suggestions on how you can get involved and start contributing to the projects if you find this stuff interesting. So in Argo's early days, so in August 2017, a company called Aplatix announces that they have just launched a new project that they are calling Argo. Kubernetes right now is only a couple years old at this point, and it's great, but it needs a little bit more. Development teams have to build frameworks that will manage software development life cycles, such as their CI/CD, testing, experimentations, and deployment of their apps. Aplatix saw this problem and recognized an opportunity to make a container native workflow engine, which runs on Kubernetes that can solve all these problems. So eventually, this becomes Argo Workflows, the present day Argo Workflows. So a few months after that, Aplatix announces the launch of Argo, which is really Argo Workflows, as I said. Aplatix is acquired by Intuit. So you might know Intuit as the company that's behind things like TurboTax, QuickBooks, Mint, products like that. They're all great. And within a month, Argo Workflows releases their version 2, and Argo Project announces that they are starting work on a new branch of Argo, which will be called Argo CD. And as indicated by the name, this project will address continuous delivery, aka the CD of CI/CD, and CI/CD needs, and it's designed to work together with Argo Workflows to really start making this environment of tools that are going to work together to make up this improved software development life cycle experience. A few months later, in 2018, BlackRock, which is the world's largest asset management company, donates a project that they've been working on to the Argo family, and thus Argo Events officially joins the show. Later that year, another project called Argo Rollouts is created, which rounds out the 4 main Argo projects, and I'll go into detail more about them just after this. So 2019 rolls around the corner, and there's some more releases. Notably, the first major version of Argo CD is released. And then in April 2020, Argo celebrates a huge win when CNCF, Cloud Native Computing Foundation, officially announces that they're going to accept Argo as an incubating project, which means that CNCF has evaluated it based on certain criteria and has approved it to move from the sandbox phase, which is the first beginner phase. So now Argo is recognized as a project that is considered stable and used successfully in production in real large-scale environments. So during 2020 and 2021, there's a lot of development happening, both in the 4 main Argo projects and some smaller projects that have since been created. Finally, at the end of 2021, Argo does something really huge and has their own ArgoCon that takes place virtually, and nearly 4,000 people register for it. So amazing. And just about 2 weeks ago in September 22, so far we just hosted our second ArgoCon, and this time it was hybrid. I unfortunately did not go, but I've heard it was really fun. If you're interested in learning more about Argo after this presentation, I highly recommend checking out some of the talks from ArgoCon. They can all be found on the CNCF YouTube channel or by looking up ArgoCon 2022. I'm sure you can find them. I watched a couple of them and they were really excellent. So what's next for Argo? What are the biggest challenges that we're facing right now? First is security challenges. We need to continue to make Argo as secure as possible and protect data against any future vulnerabilities that might come up. The second challenge is operational excellence, how we can make it easier for users, especially ones that don't have deep knowledge of the intricacies of cloud native, of which there are many, and particularly how to make environments easier to manage. This is really complex stuff, and we want to make it as easy as possible for anyone to come in, read documentation, and understand the concepts and get going. And lastly is development velocity, how to keep people engaged in contributing and all working together. As Argo continues to grow, it becomes more challenging to keep people on the same page. So communication, consistency, engagement, is really key to maintaining our growth. And that's one of the reasons I'm here talking to you today, so that we can get more people interested in Argo and hopefully contributing to it someday. So as mentioned before, these are the 4 main projects under the Argo Proj umbrella. So there's Argo Workflows, Argo CD, Argo Rollouts, and Argo Events. And the main thing that's amazing about all these projects is that they can work together to create an ecosystem to support all customers' GitOps and CI/CD needs. And just a quick note that these are not all the projects in Argo Proj. There are many different ones, and I'll touch upon a few others after these, but these are just the 4 biggest ones. So first we have Argo Workflows. Quick intro to it is it's a Kubernetes native workflow engine for orchestrating parallel jobs. It has almost 12,000 stars on GitHub, which is amazing. 611 individual contributors and 181 official users. Some of these users include Alibaba Group, Canva, Datadog, Google, NVIDIA, Robinhood, VMware, lots of big names. So what is Argo Workflows? What does it do? It is a workflow engine for orchestrating parallel jobs on Kubernetes as Kubernetes CRDs. It models multi-step workflows as a sequence of tasks and captures the dependencies between these tasks using DAG, which is a directed acyclic graph. And it runs compute-intensive jobs for machine learning and data processing really, really quickly. It can also run CI/CD pipelines natively on Kubernetes without having to configure complex software development products. Some of the use cases for it, and this data is coming from the 2021 CNCF Argo Project 2022 user survey results. So about a quarter of people use it for machine learning. Over half use it for their infrastructure automation. About 40% are using it for data processing. 18.5% are using it for ETL, which is a type of data integration process that stands for extract, transform, and load. 42% are using it for batch processing. 44% are using it for their CI/CD. And these are just some of the ways that people are using it. There's a couple others too that are a little bit smaller, but these are the main ones. So next we have Argo CD, which is my favorite. It is a declarative GitOps continuous delivery tool for Kubernetes. Has 10,500 stars on GitHub, almost close to 800 contributors. We're going to get there maybe after this presentation. And 233 official users, some of which include BMW, Capital One, edX, Major League Baseball, Tesla, really cool ones. And when I say these official users, a lot of them use all of the projects together, just so I'm not repeating a bunch of names. I'm trying to switch it up and say different ones, but a lot of the companies use more than one of the Argo projects. So what is Argo CD? What does it do? It is a Kubernetes deployment tool based on GitOps principles. GitOps uses Git repos as the single source of truth to deliver infrastructure as code. GitOps is what I do every day, so I love GitOps. It provides a way to manage declarative Kubernetes manifests that are stored in Git that can be YAML files, Helm charts, customized, etc. And when changes are detected in a manifest repo, Argo CD will deploy the desired application states in the specified environments, such as development, production, staging, etc. So an example use case, a developer, maybe you, makes a change to their application. The CI pipeline will test, build an image, push the image to Docker, and then update the Kubernetes manifest file. And since Argo CD is deployed in their Kubernetes cluster and connected to their app's Git repository, Argo CD is going to pick up those changes from CI to the Kubernetes manifest file, and it's going to automatically apply those changes in the cluster. And then all changes in the cluster can conveniently be tracked in Git that way and protected by version control. So that's really helpful when you have many people working on the same thing. So next is Argo Rollouts. So it is advanced Kubernetes deployment strategies such as Canary and Blue Green made easy. It has 16,000 stars on GitHub, 148 individual contributors, and official users right now are 35. Some of these are PayPal, Salesforce, Twilio, Quizlet, etc. So what is Argo Rollouts? Argo Rollouts is a progressive delivery controller for Kubernetes. It integrates with service meshes and ingress controllers to shape web traffic. It will also perform analysis of metrics to measure when updates are successful, failed, or inconclusive. And it can automate promotion and rollback based on those analyses. So an example use case of this, a developer wants to deploy some version 2 of their new application, and they decide to use Argo Rollouts to expose just a small percentage of their traffic to their new app version. And then they wait for Rollouts to collect those metrics. The metrics are then analyzed by Rollouts, and it's determined that the new version's performance is indeed satisfactory. The process continues, and the percentage continues to be increased until the app is entirely upgraded to the new version. This also means that if the analysis determines that it's failed or is inconclusive, changes can be rolled back really easily. So next is Argo Events. This is the fourth one of the main four. So it's event-based dependency management for Kubernetes. It has 16,000 stars on GitHub, 197 individual contributors, and official users for 37. Some of these include Ant Group, Rakuten, Woolworths, Fairwinds, and more. So what is Argo Events? It is an event-driven automation, workflow automation for Kubernetes. It allows you to trigger different actions on numerous different events using Kubernetes. The total number at this time of presentation is actually 26. So some of these events are in AWS SNS, GitHub, GitLab, Kafka, Kubernetes resources, Slack, which we love, webhooks, Stripe, Emitter, Redis, so many. Actions you can take on those events include AWS Lambda, Apache OpenWhisk, Argo Rollouts, Argo Workflows, creating a Kubernetes resource, creating custom triggers, HTTP requests. There's so more. You can do logs for debugging, Slack notifications. The list keeps growing. It's exhaustive. At the time of writing this presentation, there's 12 different trigger types, which are actions that you can take. And additionally, you can parameterize those actions based on the event's content, filter the events by conditions, and trigger actions only when multiple conditions are met. So you can really make it exactly to your use case. So some of the examples use cases are a user sets up an Argo event so that when an HTTPS post request is sent, an Argo workflow is triggered. Another is a user interacts with an interactive message in Slack, which triggers a workflow. Super cool. I love that one. A user has a webhook and a MinIO, which is S3 compliant storage event sources, and configures an Argo workflow to trigger depending on which event sources set off. So, but wait, there's more, like I said before, shocking. So these are not the only projects that are part of Argo. There's numerous smaller projects. Some of them are part of an offshoot of Argo Proj called Argo Proj Labs, which is like a project incubator within Argo. The first one is GitOps Engine with 1.4 thousand stars. It is a reusable library that implements core GitOps features such as Kubernetes, resource catch, resource conciliation, sync planning, manifest generation, and more. There's Argo CD Operator with 334 stars. Personally, I've contributed to this one too. It's amazing. This is a Kubernetes operator that aims to remove the human element as much as possible by automating tasks required when operating an Argo CD cluster. Next is Argo CD Image Updater, which is a tool to automatically update the container images of Kubernetes workloads, which are managed by Argo CD. And this project is currently in Argo Proj Labs, but has matured enough that it will be brought into Argo CD soon. So that's exciting. And lastly is Argo CD Autopilot with 453 stars. In order to help new users, Argo CD Autopilot is an opinionated tool that will automatically install Argo CD and manage GitOps repositories, making it super easy for users to get started. So after this, you're like, wow, this is super cool. How can I get involved? Well, good thing there are so many ways to get involved with Argo. No matter your skill set, no matter your level of understanding, no matter your experience, there's opportunities for people with UX skills, front end, back end, technical writing, pretty much anything. These are some, but not all of the areas where we would love to have some more contributors. And these ones are beginner friendly. So documentation first. Documentation can always use some love. If there are things that are unclear or out of date, we need people to let us know by creating issues for it and submitting fixes for it if they so choose. Next is user testing. Proactively testing the products and finding bugs before they're bigger problems is so greatly appreciated. Really, no bug is too small to report. Anything helps. Whether with UI, you see something that's a little bit off or could be better, just make a bug report for it, make a fix for it. Helping with fixing bugs is even better, but just identifying them is incredibly helpful. And then lastly, issues labeled as good first issue in GitHub. You just go to a project's repo and search for the good first issue label to find issues that are relatively easier and will likely be a good candidate for beginners or people just getting started with the project. There's also other tags such as component UI, component CLI, stuff like that if you're more interested in a specific area. My first contributions to Argo were just very small fixes to documentations and to the UI in Argo CD. Stuff like aligning things to look nicer, making things more accessible, improving keyboard navigation. Contributions don't have to be huge, fancy new features. Really, any improvements are welcome and appreciated. So please join us. We're on Slack. You just go to slack.cncf.io. We used to have our own Slack and have thus now migrated to CNCF Slack officially. So lots of good resources there. These are all the channels that we're in. There's channels for each project specifically, as well as more general channels. Our contributor calls are open to anyone to join. We have them every week. And then Argo CD and Rollouts have a meeting once a month, and Workflows and Events community call happens once a month as well. And everywhere else, you can find us on Twitter as ArgoProj, Medium as blog.argoproj, and of course on GitHub as shocking as ArgoProj. So thank you so much for listening to this presentation, and I really hope that you can join us sometime, either at GitHub or in a meeting or anywhere. Thanks.
Oh, no, that is oh gosh, such great information. I have a couple of questions. I've been trying to monitor the chat. So if you are in the chat and you have questions, now is the time. But first of all, thank you, Regina. That was a fantastic overview. But I do have a couple of questions because KubeCrash is, we marketed it as a place to come and learn about a lot of different technologies. So I think we probably have some new folks here that are just learning and that might be new to, maybe not even new to Kubernetes, but new to the CNCF ecosystem and some of the other projects. I love that, like we've been talking about kind of infrastructure all day. I don't mean to cringe when I say that, but GitOps, I mean, DevOps, I wanted to include some DevOps here, and GitOps is a really interesting concept, which I hadn't heard until, I think I was a moderator at one of the Argo, so I'm a CNCF ambassador. So during KubeCon, we picked sessions to moderate. And of course, I picked the sessions with my friends. And so I wanted to moderate the Argo session and started hearing them talk all about GitOps. This was in LA last December for KubeCon. So is GitOps just quite simply you use Git instead of Git or GitHub, or is there more to GitOps?
So GitOps is... It's using repositories as your single source of truth. So everything is stored in Git. It doesn't have to be GitHub. It can be GitLab, Bitbucket, any form of Git, just using it as version control. So you submit code. It goes through a CI process, a CD process, and then all changes to the code are tracked. So it's easy to make updates and provide version control and have rollbacks when need be. So yeah, it's basically DevOps, but just focusing as like Git as that single source of truth.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, we do have a comment from Rodrigo. I guess there's a little bit of a question in there implied. He says, great, Regina, kudos. I'm relying on Argo CD to deploy all of my workloads, front ends, back ends, Terraform, shell scripts, etc. However, the most interesting challenge was how to achieve blue-green deployment via Flagger and avoid breaking the GitOps concept.
Oh, Flagger came up the other day, actually. I think I forget if it is Argo Events or Argo Rollouts that does a similar thing to Flagger. And I think we're trying to integrate Argo rollouts into OpenShift right now, into like GitOps, because GitOps is using Argo CD. So that's something that is a future tool that we want to integrate. But I don't know too much about Flagger off the top of my head, but it looked interesting from the small bit that I heard about it. But that's very cool.
Yes, very cool. So I have another question. Yesterday, the keynote was delivered by Chick-fil-A. And when Alex was going through his stack and listing all the technology that they use, especially the open source projects, he listed Argo project. And I don't know if you knew Chick-fil-A was using you, but I thought that was really cool, along with Rancher K3s and some other really cool technology. But I was like, oh yay, Argo, that's awesome. So you could add them to your list of folks that are using you because Alex documented.
Yeah, that's awesome. On the projects, there's usually like a users.md file, so I just got it from that, and those are companies that officially support it. But there are so many other companies that that I would love to mention, but aren't like officially using it, so I don't want to mention them. But we know of a lot of really, really cool ones.
That was kind of where I was going with this question, is because I asked, do you also contribute back and to that project? And he was, had a long answer. And everybody can watch the recordings of the keynote yesterday. We don't have to recap it here. But I was going to ask, how do you know who, because it's an open source project, right? So were all the customers that you listed people who are also involved in the project and contributing?
It's people, the companies that I mentioned are companies that use it in their production. They don't have to contribute. They are welcome to just use it as they want. But a lot of companies that use it do end up contributing back to it. And that's one of the great things about open source, is that like if your company has something that they think would improve their use of it and you know how to do it, or you can contribute it or make a feature request for it, and then the community can decide if they want to actually use that idea or not. So yeah, there are a lot of companies that do contribute back to it. I think Major League Baseball is one of them. That I know that they've been in a couple meetings. So
that was a very cool one. I noted that down too. I was like, I want to find out what they're doing with it. 800 plus contributors is quite significant. And so if someone wants to get involved, what is it that you are really looking for in a contributor that you really need? Do you have any gaps like doc writers, or do you need developers, and which language do they need to be programming in? So where are you looking for folks to come and get involved?
A lot of the code is written in Golang. Anything in Golang is great. When I first started contributing, I was just starting out with Golang. I didn't really know that much about it, so I started a lot more with the front end. The front end is in React TypeScript in Argo CD at least, and in Argo Rollouts. I'm not sure about the other ones, but UI is pretty much always React. So that's a way that people can get involved if they don't have, back-end skills. Documentation, definitely. We're writing documentation pretty much as part of PRs. People who write documentation are not necessarily document writers, so like technical writers. So it's really helpful to have people who have those skills come in and look at our code or look at our documentation and make suggestions on how things can be more clear to users. That's super helpful.
Yeah, and you have a question here from Anu. Hi, can I contribute as a beginner in Golang? What are things that we should know?
Yeah, definitely. Like there's lots of issues in Golang. For people who want to start out with Golang. as I said before, like just go to a repo in Argo Proj and look for that tag with like good first issue. They usually have other labels as well associated with them. So like different components, like the CLI was one, the UI is one. Sometimes that is a combination of like Golang and front end, depending on the issue. So I would just like go through the repo and look for those issues labeled as good first issue, and see what you can contribute. If you have questions about it, just write it on the issue itself, or make a message on Slack, and try to get more information about it if you need it. But yeah, when I was starting out with Golang, like it was a great place to learn for me, basically. The community is super friendly, super helpful, really ready to help people out with contributing. So it's a great place to start.
Yeah, are you going to be at GopherCon tomorrow and Saturday?
I am not, no.
Yeah, I'm heading there to tonight. As soon as this is done, rushing over to Chicago. So if anyone's in the Chicago area, GopherCon is finally back in person. And speaking of companies that love Golang, I am very happy to actually work at a very, very large project written in Go. I think that maybe the largest outside of Kubernetes. So yeah, little Cockroach DB, the little database that could written in Go. Yeah, I second that. It's a super cool language. It's a lot of fun, and it's a really fun community. So everyone here from Chicago, come to GopherCon this weekend. It's down at the McCormick Center, I believe. So there's my pitch for, I love open source conferences and projects. And actually, speaking of, projects that are not governed by the CNCF, we had a talk earlier about, to or not to put your project in the CNCF. And as a CNCF ambassador, I am actually very impartial. There's reasons to do it and not to do it.
Right.
Okay, any more questions for Regina? I think we've covered everything that I've seen, but if I missed something, here's your last chance to write something in. Otherwise, I think anything else that you want to tell us, or any other like plugs for getting started or for contributing, or are you going to be at KubeCon in Detroit this?
I will not be there, but I will be there attending virtually.
Oh, okay. We gotta get you out on the road.
I know.
Yeah, so that is coming up. I think everybody here probably knows about KubeCon, but that is the big CNCF conference that happens twice a year, once in North America and once in EMEA somewhere. And we started this little conference to be the no time zones left behind, and to help out, to bring the information to folks that can't travel or can't make it to KubeCon. And especially since we started this just sort of at the tail end of the COVID travel restrictions, we thought this is how we bring the content to you. And now it's become a 2-day conference. So yay, Kube Crash. A lot of fun. Okay. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, and I don't see any, I will just say thank you so much, Regina. I really appreciate you doing this. And it's such a fun project. Everybody should get involved. We put some links in. And Regina, if you have any other links that you want to throw into the chat, if you want to hang out for a few minutes, or if there's any questions that trickle in for you, I will say